I know how to float people in the air and cut people in half and create the most perfect illusion, but this was no illusion. This was really divine intervention. It was a miracle.
There's been a change, and it's oh so plain to see.
Hi, I'm Ruth Ann, and this is Damascus Roads. Las Vegas. What comes to your mind? The desert? Outrageous hotels? Big shows? Slot machines? This is a story about the glamour and glitz of live show business, the big acts, and the price to pay for seeking fame. Meet a grand illusionist. Meet Paul Fiddler.
I was born and raised in Long Beach, California, and I was a curious sort. I was always involved in finding out how things worked. I was building things. I loved to build model cars. I had an erector set that I built all kinds of different robots and different things. I was very intrigued with how things worked. I liked to be sneaky too, so that was how the magic bug got to me early on, because I thought, you know, hey, I can be sneaky and not get in trouble for it because I can do magic and pull the wool over people's eyes. And so I started playing around with magic when I was like 5 years old. I liked fooling people, but I also liked the attention. When I saw the oohs and ahs in their eyes, it made me feel, you know, like, wow, you know, I'm special. I can do something. It, you know, it added to my my confidence, I guess, because of the fact that, you know, I really, as a kid, I didn't feel like I had a lot of confidence. I didn't feel great about myself, although I could play it like I was, you know, really the hot guy in the neighborhood, so to speak. But when I started doing magic, and nobody else could do what I did, that was like something really special. That was, you know, that made me stand out in the crowd. I played sports. I also got into ventriloquism. One time I remember my dad had a motorbike, and I decided, since I could build things, I would take it apart and clean it for him. Well, I took it all apart and put all the parts in a box, but I didn't kind of pay attention to how they went together. And that motorbike never got back together again. Well, after I had learned magic a little bit, I had a friend in the neighborhood who I used to borrow the magic tricks from, because magic tricks are very expensive. So I borrowed them, and I sold a magic show to a birthday party, and I made $5 whole, and I had to do a whole hour show. And I had to convince them that I was worth $5 an hour, but I made $5, so I was now what they call a professional, you know, because I made money doing this. I was interested in animals too. And animals were a big part of my life. You know, we always had dogs, cats, and one time I decided that I wanted to have my own pet. Well, I was in Boy Scouts, and I found a snake. And it was a boa constrictor up in the mountains, and I put it in a paper sack and brought it home. Didn't even tell my parents I had it. I was doing magic tricks with it. I would try to make it appear and disappear, and it was my first springboard into performing with animals. Magic, again, as I said, when I first got into it, it made me stand out in the crowd, in my eyes. I could do something that nobody else could do. And I always tried to go after that. In the very beginning, when I first started doing magic in my teenage years, I would copy other magicians, and whatever they did, I would do. Early on in my career, I was able to work with Milton Berle, and Milton always bragged that he would do other people's jokes, and he would do them better than they did. And so I thought, well, hey, I'll do the same thing. I'll take magic tricks from all these different magicians that are creating these things, and I'll copy them, and I'll try to do them too. And it made me feel special because I could do those magic tricks, and I ended up winning trophies and awards for it. I remember when I was 15 years old, I went to a magic convention up in Santa Rosa, California, and I won the first award, the first prize award for the best magician on the Pacific Coast. And then I was really hooked. I went on to win numerous awards over my early career. Magic was not something you could make a living at, and so I decided that I was going to be a veterinarian because my two loves were magic and animals. And I had been doing magic with birds at that time. I had everything from a parakeet on up to an ostrich. I worked with an ostrich at one point. As I went to college, I got very discouraged with studying zoology and chemistry and everything. I was very frustrated, and I came home one day and I told my mom and dad, I said, it was the Vietnam War was going on at the time, and I said, I'm going to join the service and go into and fight in the war. And they were like, why? You're not going to do that. It's like, whoa, let's have a talk, And my dad always encouraged me. He said, anything you put your mind to, you can achieve, Paul. And I always believed that. I thought, if he said it, it must be true. And but I also felt that it was all up to me, everything I chose to do and I had to work hard at. And there was no God in this thing. God wasn't helping me. God was some distant idea, and I wasn't even sure at that time if God really was real, because I didn't have any relationship. I just didn't feel God was important at that point. It was all up to Paul Fiddler. Paul Fiddler's got to be the best. Paul Fiddler's got to work hard. I became a workaholic. And I was like, I knew that if it was going to happen, I was going to have to do it. And things started to happen. I changed my major from zoology to theater arts and went into magic because, they said if you're happiest doing that, then we know you'll be a great one. I didn't go to Vietnam. I started doing TV shows instead. I got an opportunity to perform on a show called the All-American College Show, which was a professional national TV show where they went around to colleges and they got entertainment. I loved basking in the limelight, so to speak. It was something that just fed my passion, and my passion fed it. And it was like, but again, there was, as I say, at that point in my life, there was no God, there was no Jesus in my life at all. It was all just work, achieve, do whatever it, took to make the show happen. It had to be perfect. Well, that got me into trouble lots of times because it's not always going to go perfect, and I would get mad at assistants, I'd get mad at stagehands. I mean, even my bosses that would hire me, they'd tell me to do something a little different. Well, hey, I thought I knew how to do it the best, so I would do it. And, I would do it my way, and it was my way or the highway. And it was something that, like I say, got me into a lot of trouble over my life because I was a workaholic. I did not have any problems with drugs, didn't have any problems with alcohol, but my work was the most important thing to me, and my magic and being a performer and being the best, my passion burns. lot of times, especially Christian people, have a tendency to think that I'm into like witchcraft or that kind of magic, black magic. What I create are tricks, basically. But again, I try to make the tricks look as real as possible. You know, magic is basically can be really explained with simple methods, but if we do it correctly with misdirection, with a convincing way of performing, you can make it look like a miracle. My dream from when I was a little boy performing magic was I want to someday be on a stage in Las Vegas performing. And so whatever it took to get there, because I was going to get to Vegas. That was my goal. I was going to get to Vegas. I was not going to allow anybody to get in my way at all. And if you got in my way, I would mow them down. When I first started doing magic, I was in white tie and tails, and I dressed in a tuxedo the way I thought a magician should look. But I noticed I couldn't get as many jobs as I wanted. So if I may backtrack for just a moment, I started noticing that Hawaiian restaurants had review shows. They all had floor shows. So I thought, wow, if I could put a Hawaiian act together, I could do a Hawaiian show on all of these different stages at all these different Hawaiian restaurants. What I did is I told everybody I was born in Hawaii, even though I was born in California. And so I told everybody I was born in Hawaii, all the different buyers and so on. And so then they accepted me. And that was the show that I landed on the television show, the vaudeville television show, and then it went on to Puerto Rico. And from Puerto Rico, I landed my very first contract in Las Vegas. And that was at the Tropicana Hotel in the show called Folies Bergère. One of the things about the Folies Bergère is it's well known as a topless review show. And I was one of the specialty acts in the topless review show. And there were a lot of women around and a lot of temptation. At that time, I was working with a lady who had performed with me in Las Vegas. And her parents were very stout Catholics. They did not want us to live together and travel around, so they wanted us to get married. And so we did. We got married. But the marriage was, for me, looking back on it, was a marriage of convenience for the show. I did it because I didn't want the show to break up. She was a great, assistant, and as a result, I married her. But again, my eyes would wander, and I would be checking out the different women in the show, and the only love I had, and the only love I had was my show, my magic. Relationships were not important to me, but down the road, I realized that I had no relationships with anyone. And as a result, my career and my life started to take a tailspin. 1981, I went through my divorce. And I was performing down in Acapulco, Mexico for the government down there in a Las Vegas show. And I met who is now my current wife. Her name is Maida. And the career was going along. She became part of my show, and we were performing all over the place on television shows in Las Vegas, and everything was great. But again, my focus was on the show, but she was part of my life. When we got married in 1986, the first few years were fine, but again, my focus became very much on the show again, as always. And she wanted to have children, and kids were not part of my life at all. I did not want kids. They were going to get in the way of my show. I was pretty ruthless. I got to admit, I was not the nicest guy in the world, and my marriage of 4 years at that time crashed and burned. And she filed papers against me to get a divorce, and it was the most traumatic thing in my life because I love Maida very much. And I loved Maida very much, and she, I didn't want to lose her. And I prayed to God First of all, I tried everything I could myself to make the marriage get back together again. And it was not going to happen. It was not going to happen unless I changed. Early when I met my wife, back in Acapulco, I had met a couple dancers, James and Kathy Taylor, God love them. They were two dancers who were Christians who had influence on me. To this day, I know they don't know that they had as much influence on me as they did, but when everything started to go to pieces, everything that I had learned through their Bible studies back in Acapulco, as well as other friends that had talked to me about Jesus, all of that started to come back. And instead of going to other women at that time, because I had already tried all that, I decided, no, I love my wife, Maida, and I don't want to lose her. And so I turned my life over to God at that time, and I said, God, would you please help me make this marriage back to, whole again, make it strong, make it the way it should be. And I'll do everything I can. And I started reading books and reading the Bible and listening to Trinity Broadcasting, the different television shows and the different speakers that were on there. And this is how I came to know about Trinity Broadcasting Network, is because of the fact that I needed God. And I started, I don't know how I actually turned on the TV and found them, but I did. And I realized that my career was not important anymore. I realized that everything I had done at that point was not important anymore. My marriage and my life with my wife and my life with God was all that was important. And, it didn't happen right away. I was very, I expected God to just go, voila, magic, and it would happen, but it didn't. I had to learn. He wanted me to grow. He wanted me to stretch, and he was stretching me big time. What had happened is right when my wife left me, I had a booking to go on a cruise ship up to Alaska to perform. And she was supposed to go with me, but I also had a male assistant who I asked if he would go with me instead, since my wife didn't want to have anything to do with me at that time. And during that time I was up in Alaska, I felt so close to God and to heaven and to just everything. I mean, I would look up into the stars and I would pray, and it became a whole life-changing experience. I don't know how to explain it except the fact that I felt like God was taking me and shaking me and saying, wake up. Don't you realize that, for 40 years you've been in the wilderness, and now I want you to come out of the wilderness. I want you to change the things that are wrong, and I want to have a relationship with you, Paul. And at that time when he was saying that to me, it was like he was talking in my heart. It was like just a small little still voice, but it was amazing. I got into the Bible. I got into reading books about God and about Jesus, and I turned my life over to God at that time, and I asked him, I said, please restore my marriage. My work was not important. The cars and the houses and everything that I owned at the time, none of that was important. The only thing that was important was my marriage. And I knew I had to change. I knew I had to change some of my thinking, because, as I say, I didn't want to have children, and she wanted to have children. I told God, I said, God, if you restore my marriage, I will have children, and my first child, I will dedicate him to you, and I will make sure he knows who you are, Jesus. And now I have two boys, and both my boys know who Jesus is. I totally devoted my life at that time to Jesus. And my marriage now is strong. We've been married now 16 years. We just celebrated our 16th wedding anniversary. We went to Hawaii and celebrated. And one of the things I know about marriage, and this is something I didn't do before, but we do now, if you want your marriage to stay together, you have to pray together. Praying is so important to keep a marriage and a relationship and a family together. It is so important. It is the magic that makes a marriage work. As a magician, I'm skeptical of everything. I know how all the tricks work. I can turn a snake into a cane like Moses did. I mean, it's using a trick method. I create a fire I can create a fire burning bush that talks and so on. So I was very skeptical that there was even a God at all. And one of the things that I discovered when I started to pray is God revealed to me certain things, and my skepticism went out the window, because at that point, I saw miracles actually starting to happen, miracles that had no explanation, because I knew all the tricks of the trade. And when my heart started to change and my heart started to soften, I knew there was only one way that could happen, because, as I say, I was pretty cold, pretty ruthless. I was, I was into the world very heavily. But I looked up to heaven and I said, God, I don't know if you are real, but if you are, do something. Don't just look down. Do something. And things started to happen in my life. And my heart changed, my wife's heart changed, we got our marriage back together again, and God is an awesome God. And that's the whole thing. I had never tried God's way. And I don't know why, as a human being, we always try it our way, our way, our way. It was always Paul Fiddler's way. But we don't want to try God's way. You know, if I could do my whole life again, I'd try God's way first. I wouldn't try my way first. But when I finally came to the good Lord and Jesus came into my life and I tried like laying hands on someone to heal them and they were healed, I'm in awe. It just blew me away because I know how to float people in the air and cut people in half and create the most perfect illusion, but this was no illusion. This was really divine intervention. It was a miracle. And, you know, the man is still alive to this day, and he's healthy, and the man I laid my hands on, and it wasn't through me. It was, you know, the Holy Spirit worked through me. I could feel it. I could feel it. And, you know, the temptations are out there still. Oh, yeah, they're still out there, the drugs, alcohol, women, and so on. But, you know, when you keep your focus on the good Lord, and you keep your focus on God, and you know that you have a destiny, you know, one of the things about it is I found that God does have a destiny for every one of us. And my destiny has been in entertainment, but I also know that the enemy takes God's destiny and tries to pervert it. Everyone has a destiny. The enemy will try to take you off on little tangents. The devil will try to tempt you here and tempt you there, and it all sounds good. It's kind of like cooking a frog. You know, when you cook a frog, if you throw him in hot water right away, he jumps right out. But if you warm him up slowly, to warm the water up and warm it up and warm it up, you know, you can cook that frog. Well, the enemy works the same way with your destiny, with your life. He'll give you little things that'll tease you, and it feels good at the time, and it's exciting and so on. And then he'll give you a little more, and he'll give you a little more. And eventually, you can make a whole mess of your life, and you don't even know it. It's like cooking that frog. You know, the frog doesn't even know the water's getting hot until he's cooked. Well, I didn't know my water was hot until I was almost cooked, when my marriage and everything just went crashing. And instead of staying in the hot water, everything I had learned my whole life, since I was a little boy about God and Jesus and the people that had influenced me, everything they had taught me, all of a sudden it started to bombard my mind. You know, that Jesus is real and that God can help you, and that I wanted to jump out of the hot water. I didn't want to jump in the hot water more and get involved with more women and say, oh, well, my wife is leaving me, I'll go find somebody else, which I would have done years before. It all came to a head, and everything that had slowly came into my life, the bad went out and the good stayed. And all I can say is thank you, God, that the good stayed. I realized everything on this earth, the cars, the houses, the women, everything that I had and that I have had in my life, none of that is important because, like it says in the Bible, it'll all turn to dust. And the only thing that's tangible is Jesus Christ, God, and salvation. I've never been a quitter in my life, but I had considered ending it all. I considered, you know, it's like... you know, I've tried it my way. I've made a mess of my life. It was weird because God flashed all these things back into my life, things that I had done, and it was like a real soul-searching time. But if God hadn't come into my life, I probably wouldn't be here talking right now. Boy, God really works in mysterious ways, let's put it that way. I now play the villain in the Tournament of Kings show here at the Excalibur Hotel here in Las Vegas. Let's go have some fun. And I'm the bad guy. I invented many years ago, I've been working with fire my whole magic career, but I invented some technology where I can make fire come out of anything. So they hired me to create fire effects for the medieval Tournament of Kings show, and I make fire come out of shields, I make fire come out of my hand, I make fire come out of swords, I even make fire come out of my chest at one point. I burst into flames and flames shoot out of my chest. They didn't invite me to the round table, so I'm angry, you know, and I'm going to cause havoc. playing the villain, one of the things that I have had the opportunity to do backstage and with people that are in show business is they think of me as my character, playing Mordred, the king of the dragons, the bad guy, the villain. And when they find out that I am a Christian, and I try to be a witness to the people that I work with. There's a lot of darkness in show business, and I try to shine some light into show business now, and I feel that's why God has placed me where he's placed me. I play a devilish kind of role, yet I'm a Christian. It's a mixture of two different realms of life, and people do take notice when I start to talk about Jesus Christ and God and salvation. And the only thing I can say again is I know every magic trick in the book, or almost every one. I know the tricks of the trade, and God is real. I haven't totally arrived yet, as I say. I'm not the perfect person I want to be or I should be, but I'm so far from where I started out. And all I can say is I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I know who holds tomorrow.
Today, when Paul isn't spending time with his cherished family, you can catch him performing one grand illusion after another. But offstage, Paul will testify to the miraculous things that God has done that are not illusions. We'll keep our eyes out for Paul as he seeks to use his God-given creativity. You know, the Bible says that this life is but a vapor, an illusion perhaps. Isn't it strange then that we as humans seem to focus so much on this short life instead of thinking about the long life that's eternal? Thank you so much for watching. We want to hear from you. If you have any questions or we want to know your thoughts, email us. You can reach us at damascusroads@tbn.org. Or if you visit the TBN website at tbn.org, just click on the Damascus Roads icon and you can find out more about this guest and others that have been on the program. If you know someone who is searching for answers in their life, why don't you tell them about Damascus Roads? Perhaps they would benefit from hearing about someone else who has searched just like them. And don't forget to tell your friends to watch. Until next time, God bless.
Tonight's program has been sponsored by the Trinity Broadcasting Network. And only with your love gift of support can it stay on the air. So please write to TBN, P.O. Box A, Santa Ana, California, 92711. Or email us at damascusroads@tbn.org.